Okay, we're doing this shit again. Alright, God help me. Renamon, Carmelita, Fusion. I've gotten real lazy on these title cards, haven't I? Before I was doing those cute little character vignette things. Am I using that word properly? Vignette? Yeah, it doesn't matter. But I was doing those cute little character vignette things for the first couple videos. Because they were just videos of me drawing each of these girls by themselves. So I could get away with doing that, something a little bit more interesting than just doing some little PowerPoint fucking my video title, my name, I'm drawing porn, wowee. It's a bit more interesting to do a little character sketch thing, and I quite enjoyed doing them actually. But this go around for these multiple character videos, my sort of original thought that cropped up when I started thinking about what I wanted to do with these title cards this go around was, shit, I'm gonna have to draw two characters. I'm gonna have to draw these two characters meeting. That's complicated. I don't want to do that. That's time. That's work. Fuck that. Y'all are getting the fucking PowerPoint treatment. Y'all are getting the fucking Carmelita, Renamon, Fusion, and then fucking reused assets. That's where y'all are getting. And it occurs to me now that what I could have done is I could have taken the design I actually come up with in this video and done a little vignette sketch thing there. And that would have been actually perfect. Don't know why I didn't think of that. But then again, that's sort of spoiling the surprise, isn't it? You know, just like the sort of design I come up with that you watch the whole video for, and I just throw it in your face right at the beginning. Then again, that's a completely moot point, isn't it? Because people don't really find these videos. They just click on the link I put in the original post. So they've already seen the final art, so I'm beating a dead horse to even more death at this point. Oh God. What do people even watch these videos for? Alright, they don't. Oof, I love my 3-minute average watch time. Oh boy. I can really just put zero effort into this and it's perfect. Yeah, whatever. Intro. Hey guys, I'm Greasy Mojo, Mainline Mojo, whatever, call me fucking Mojo. And I got another video for y'all. This is the 5th video in my Carmelita, Crystal, Renamon, Trifusion series. Name order does not matter. In the first 3 videos, I just went and drew each of these girls by themselves, sort of exploring their design, talking about their personalities, what I thought about them, the sort of environments they were in, and that sort of stuff. Really long, boring things. And the 4th video was me fusing Renamon and Crystal together into a it's a decent looking picture. Sort of wrong methodology in design. It was mostly Renamon wearing some weird crystal crap on her. And in this video, obviously, I'm doing Carmelita plus Renamon. And if you don't know what a trifusion is, at this point, that's sad, but I'll go over it anyway. A trifusion is when you take 3 characters, a character A, a character B, and a character C. And from those 3 characters, you create 3 fusions. A fusion of character A and B, then B and C, then A and C. And then from those 3 designs that you create a 4th and final fusion, the trifusion, which is a combination of all those 3 designs that you come up with. And the sort of goal, the sort of methodology you're trying to follow here is that you are trying to not draw Carmelita and Renamon's clothing. Well, that's just nudity at that point. You're not trying to draw Renamon and Carmelita's clothing. You're not trying to do that. You're trying to create a new character that can sort of stand on its own, has its own personality. You're designing a character from 2 points of inspiration approximately. And what you're doing is you're taking design elements from these two designs and fusing them together. You know, trying to go for a 50-50 whenever you can, and sort of seeing where you need to lean here and there. It's sort of a designing challenge. It's sort of the driving idea behind it. To problem solve artistically. That's sort of like the goal of what you're trying to do here. And I will say that the design, and y'all have already fucking seen it at this point. If you haven't fucking followed the link to this video from the original post, or haven't already just clicked to the end to see what I come up with, you'll see, or well, you've seen this original end idea, and I sort of like it. I think I did a pretty good job fusing them together. Spoiler alert, woo. Doesn't matter. Anyway, let's talk about what I'm actually fucking doing at this point. Now, you've seen me sort of doing a bunch of sketching here. That's part of my process I've come up with. I'll look at, I'll take the two characters and put them on screen, and I'll go to Renamon, say. And from there, I'll be looking at Carmelita and sort of tracing back over Renamon, sort of trying to incorporate Carmelita's design features into Renamon. Not really thinking like drawing what I see on Carmelita onto Renamon. I'm just sort of trying to see what's on Carmelita, and I'm trying to take what's on Renamon and sort of draw something new. It's not so much I'm drawing Renamon, it's that I'm just using Renamon for a pose, a sort of a trace, so I don't have to worry about that as I'm trying to plot design elements. And then I do go over to Carmelita and I do the same thing again. And once I have those two mapped out, I start sort of doing sort of front-on sketches, side sketches, sort of trying to map everything I want to and make sure I'm not really leaving anything out from either character. And I'm sort of seeing where I can incorporate stuff, where I can fix stuff, what my problems are going to be. I do a lot of my problem solving in this stage. Not that all of the problem solving is done in this stage. By no means, that never fucking happens. The most problems I have are later on when I see something I fuck up on, or I start worrying about something I didn't do exactly right, and I spend hours just fucking around trying to fix something that probably doesn't even need fixing, or needs to just be rethought entirely. And as you can see here, I've sort of found the design I'm looking for. The sketch that's in between them currently, the two Renamon and Carmelita, is that pose is probably something I should have gone ahead with instead of the pose that you're seeing right now is what I obviously go ahead with. But the facing on pose, I really liked it, but what ended up happening was I was sort of overthinking it, and I was thinking to myself, this doesn't really fit the idea I have of this character. I want sort of a tough fighter girl, and this goes back to when I sat down to finally start working on the fusion designs. Not in a drawing sense. I just was open. I opened a notepad and I wanted to sort of plot out how these designs or how these characters worked, what their personalities were, what like sort of settings they could go in, and there you see it sort of jumped ahead to the second primary already. I didn't change the color or anything of the sketch. I just didn't record an hour of footage somehow. I think I went over to OBS and I guess I double clicked the recording part of it, and so I did the entire like the second primary without recording it. And once I realized that, I was like, well, fuck, I'm not redoing this, so whatever. And here from now on, I'm just sort of tweaking things and doing a bunch of menial work that I should probably do off screen, or off recording, off screen, it doesn't matter what I say. But I'm just fucking fooling around at this point. But what was I talking about? Going back to the pose, yes. The pose, as I'm mapping out these characters, these fusion ideas, I'm doing that mostly so I don't get too much overlap in between any one of them. And sort of the idea I had for Crystal and Renamon was as I said in the other video, which you should watch, I didn't really know what direction I wanted to go with that one. So, well, I didn't know where I wanted to go with that one. But for the other two, I had pretty decent ideas of how I wanted to draw these girls. For Renamon plus Carmelita, I pretty much became maybe overly attached to the idea of making her sort of a maximized anger sort of girl. Like really pissed off. A fighter, rash, arrogant. Really sort of too much Carmelita, to be honest. Too much Carmelita. I think my thought process was well, the idea, I guess, was that fusing Renamon into Carmelita would sort of exacerbate Carmelita's worst personalities or worst tendencies, character traits, which doesn't really make sense, does it? It doesn't really make sense. Carmelita is, I hate to use the word, but fiery, angry, rash. You know, as I said in the Carmelita video, she's sort of an airhead, or not really an airhead, that's the wrong word. Even though that's sort of how she comes off as, giving how everything plays out in those games. But she doesn't think things through. Like, she's rash, as I've said. And Renamon is aloof, sort of cold. She doesn't emote like Carmelita does. So really looking at it, or thinking about it, it doesn't really make much sense that Renamon's personality would amplify any of those traits, those rash, fiery, angry traits in Carmelita. I'm thinking maybe that Renamon maybe had a lack of Renamon's inherent selfishness when mixed into Carmelita's personality would create someone who's even more, like, thinking about Carmelita as being like a lawful good, like following the law to a point of ignoring actual context. Mixing in Carmelita's Renamon's selfishness into that would create this sort of vigilante type character who was even more stricter on justice, but in sort of a overtly more violent way. I guess you can see here he's ready to punch the shit out of somebody. Some poor fucking bastard. But that was sort of my idea, I guess. I made these ideas a long time ago, so it's sort of hard to think back of what my planning was. Doing these videos every month, doing one a month is probably not the best idea to sort of maintain overall project sense. Probably not the best idea. I'll keep that in mind to, I guess, change that later, I guess. So in a sense, this character I created was sort of a failure, because it's not really a good mix of these two characters' personalities. It's not. The sketch I was referring to earlier in the video, the one that was in between the two transparencies of Carmelita and Renamon, was probably more fitting of a sort of character pose. And I'm using the pose here to really, you look at the pose and you sort of really get a sense of what the character's like. In that pose where she was walking directly to the viewer, sort of hand out raised or whatever, though her hand position probably would have changed in further revisions. Maybe kept it to a fist, maybe holding up a badge, maybe? Nah, not really. But that was more fitting, because Carmelita mixed with a little bit of Renamon, I believe, would come off as she's less emotive, she's less rash, she's more thinking, maybe colder. Maybe, I hate to use D&D alignment too much, but more lawful evil? I don't know. But that does sound correct. For Carmelita to become more of a silent, immensely strong force, that makes sense. And thinking about it the other way, thinking about Renamon mixed with a little Carmelita, she's much more willing to use force to get what she wants. Because Renamon is the type that sort of, she's placed into the trope of sitting on like a high ground or whatnot and overlooking story events or whatever and plotting something or whatever, or making her own choices or whatever. Mixing in a little Carmelita to that would make her not sit back. She would be more on the front lines, not really thinking about her next moves, but knowing, mostly riding on instinct, riding on over, sort of shoving her viewpoints, her actions, her opinions, her goals. Goals, the word I'm fucking grasping trying to say. But she's more forward in enacting her goals and less planning. And I think the original sketch I was referring to probably conveyed that a little bit better. She has, because they're sort of like on opposite extremes in terms of like class. Renamon's more classy, though if you watch the original Digimon Tamers, the English dub made her a bit more cheeky. But I get a sense that she's more she has more class. She's graceful, poised, whatever fucking words you want to use. She's silent. And Carmelita's basically on the other extreme of that. Just fucking loud, fucking does what the fuck she wants, has an immense sort of like, I gotta go fucking do this now sort of thing. Like, she sees something wrong, she fucking fixes it, because that's what she does. And sort of blending those two extremes together would create someone who's she plans, she crafts, she waits, but she takes action in more direct, physical ways. Maybe not so much physical, but she often goes out to enact her will. I'm really struggling trying to figure out this bunch of thinking I should have done beforehand in order to create a good picture, but I didn't. Hindsight is, it has like its boot on my windpipe, but I'm already dead. But this design I eventually went up and going with was a result of me becoming fixated on this, sort of playing into the sin of original idea. And that's sort of when you become so attached to a way something is, that something how you originally think of it, sort of prevents you from thinking along other lines. And it's not like strictly an art thing. It's like an everything thing. It becoming overly enamored, overly attached to ideas can prevent you from looking at things from different viewpoints, from new perspectives. And that was the issue here. I became fixated on this fusion of Carmelita and Renamon being this angry-ass fighter. Someone who more or less just sort of brings over a more neutral stance towards things in comparison to Carmelita's strict rigidity in law and not caring about context. Because here, effectively, what this character is a more angrier, more physical Carmelita. That's all it is. She needed more of Renamon's class, her poise and elegance, which is what, as I say before, the original sketch I did sort of captured. But I was enamored with this original idea I had, and I just couldn't break away from it. And that sort of pervaded a lot of this drawing, or the design process I actually did of this drawing. Early on, I struggled a lot with trying to figure out what this character's weapon would be. Because Carmelita has her shock pistol thing. And Renamon, I may have said this before, but I'm not really thinking too hard about the Digimon part of her. I probably should. I probably should be using that to inform my decisions in this bit. I don't care about Digimon. I really don't. And I really don't think about it when I think about Renamon's character. It's probably a huge... it is a problem. It is a mistake on my part to do that. And I should be incorporating that in. But it's something I don't like. Not in a very overt sense. It's just something I'm like, it's stupid. I don't want to think about it. So I'm trying to combine weapon with no weapon. Or in my sense, Renamon is a completely hand-to-hand fighter. She does do that some in the anime. I don't even remember at this point. I glossed over so much of that while I just had it playing while I was working on stuff, so I barely even watched it. I just sort of got a sense of how the dub was changing her character, honestly. But her weapon is non-existent. I said that weird. She like I said, she's a hand-to-hand fighter. And I don't consider her Digimon abilities or Diamond Storm or whatever it's called. I also think she had like a spinning attack or something like that. I don't consider those in that. So I'm just thinking about short range melee combatant versus Carmelita's long range shock pistol thingy. And I became enamored really early on with giving this character a shotgun. Not so much... well... I really wanted to make the idea work because I wanted sort of the sort of emotional high of making it work and getting the reaction from people being, I want them to ask like, why did you do that? And I want to give them my explanation of, well, you see, Carmelita she has a firearm. She's a long range fighter. Ignoring sort of the physical capabilities she has. And Renamon is a close range fighter. She punches, she kicks, ignoring her Digimon abilities. So what I'm doing here is I'm combining long range firearm with short range hand to hand. Long range firearm plus short hand or short range. That's a shotgun. There's a short range firearm. And that's sort of like, I was like, oh, that's so cool if I can pull that off. But the thing was, I really couldn't. I couldn't ever convince myself that I could sort of bullshit my way into doing that. So in the end, I decided on giving her those sort of brass knuckle glove things. Those little tips on her gloves. Which I think is a good enough in between. It's more an issue with the shotgun just takes up too much design real estate. It's too big, basically, because Carmelita's shock pistol plus nothing has to be something smaller. In following the sort of methodology that I'm using behind these videos, there was no real way I could bullshit giving her a larger firearm without just admitting to myself, okay, at this point I'm just ignoring it. It was too egregious of an allowance I could give myself. It was just too much. So, like I said, I just resorted to giving her some sort of augmentation to her physical punching prowess. It's sort of that pervasive idea of the fighter type character I wanted to make with this. I probably, like I said, I can't really remember. I probably toyed around a little bit with the idea of giving her like a melee weapon. But I think again, it would have to be comparable or smaller in size to Carmelita's shock pistol, which is sort of like a short stick. And I gave the previous fusion a fucking stupid looking shillelagh thing. And I didn't really want to do that again. I could have given her like a taser or something, or like a stun rod or something like that. But, well, thinking about it now, a stun rod might have actually been a pretty good in-between. Well, it's obviously too late now to go change it. That's just too big of a thing to incorporate without having to change a good bit amount of this. I suppose I could put it into one of her hands. And there's like a 10% chance I'll go back and do that. I probably won't. But we'll see. I could just overthink this to the point of me having to go fucking change from this video again. But who knows? Who knows? Hopefully I'll just forget it and just not do it. You can see here I'm already to the stage of doing the rendering on her, and we still got like 20 minutes left, which is a bit of a spoiler for how the rest of this video goes. I do a lot of fucking around, and I do a lot of overthinking, and I do want to talk a little bit about my rendering process. It's like, I'm using that term lightly here, like my cell shading. I do want to talk about that, but I'm probably not going to be able to fill 20 minutes of me talking about that. So I'm going to continue on talking about sort of the design things I did here. A few things, let's see. Her hair was something I thought was pretty cool. I was pretty excited. I was super excited when I sort of stumbled on, how am I going to handle Renamon's fucking back feathers? They're stupid looking. And I think at first I was going to give her the jackets some sort of ripped out, weird looking things. Because I was already doing some interesting things for the jacket, like where the connection from the jacket arm is split from the rest of the things. So that's trying to capture Renamon's long glove things and Carmelita's jacket. But then I was like, wait, combine it with the hair. And I did. And it ended up looking pretty cool. I think just from looking at it as a standalone character, I really like the shape it is. It's maybe not too, and this is a good thing maybe. It's not too evocative of Renamon, I think. It's just, it sort of feels like it's maybe a little bit like how someone would style Carmelita's hair to begin with. Not really, but it's not enough, I would say. It's not enough of a incorporation of Renamon's design to make me happy, I guess. But at the end, it does look cool and I like it. So that's probably the biggest win I can walk away from that situation. Now, I was talking about the jacket before. Early on, I knew I wanted to do a sort of large rip on both sides of her jacket to invoke Renamon's, the sort of break of Renamon's sleeves where they come out to the point. I wanted to capture that along with Carmelita's jacket. Now the sleeve of Carmelita's jacket and Renamon, there's not a lot like that's actually like significantly different to do. And going down to her gloves, it's Renamon has no gloves specifically, and Carmelita has gloves specifically, so super easy to just do fingerless gloves there. It's a very sort of easy out, I guess. Oh, and this is like an hour-long section of me trying to fix something with her face that probably wasn't broken in the beginning. There's some times when you're drawing that you need to just sort of stop and say it doesn't matter, move on to something else, because it'll look right in some ways and it'll look wrong in other ways. Looking at the picture now, the final picture, her eye probably looks worse than it does. But when I was doing the shading, I just couldn't get around there something being wrong. So I spent an hour fixing it and fucking up into an even greater, something less than it was already. And then I just shat on from there. Awful. Just awful. Just throw this drawing away. Didn't I just say I like it like 20 minutes ago? I'm getting mood swings up in here. But anyway, the jacket. The sleeve rips, they're pretty cool. They sort of emulate the fighter type character I was desperately trying to hang on to. Because, torn jacket, she gets into lots of fights, I guess, or whatever. You can bring over the sort of arm sleeve look from Renamon and, keep the jacket from Carmelita. Something I had a lot of problem with the previous fusion was Crystal had very little in the ways of clothing, but Renamon was completely nude already. So really what all I could do is sort of draw even less clothing if I was trying to stay perfect to sort of the design methodology I was trying to implement. But I did just, at that point it would have been something like almost comically skimpy. And while I didn't want to do that because it was just something that wouldn't work out design wise. It's like a video I'm having to put up on YouTube, and I don't want to draw something overly sexual for YouTube. Even though just looking at this now, it's like, well, really, Mojo, really? But I have all these fucked up priorities I'm trying to maintain that don't work out in the end. As a whole, just looking at the design by itself without having to think about that it's a fusion, I think it's a pretty good design. There's some things that are wrong with the actual implementation, and there's major things wrong with the fusion methodology. But as a standalone drawing, I think it's pretty... I enjoy it. And thinking about it as like, here are the two characters that it's inspired from. It's pretty good in that regard as well. But trying to apply the methodology I've been trying to maintain throughout this series, it sort of just falls apart. And that's almost like a problem I'm throwing at it for the sake of throwing a problem at it. Which is sort of what it sounds like to me. So maybe I just can't win. Maybe I just need to stop thinking about that and just sort of enjoy what it is and what I've created. It's probably a pretty good idea to do. Other things. Like the previous one, I sort of carried over Renamon's little yin-yang symbol thing. In that one, I just was overtly putting yin-yang symbols everywhere. On this one, I sort of tried to combine it with Carmelita's badge. She doesn't really have like a repeating symbol all over, but her badge is something that's like, iconic's the wrong word, but it's sort of an icon that could be iconic. Yeah, I'm stretching far out here. So I went in there and I sort of created this sort of upside down pentagon with the sort of the vision in it. And being gold metal, I made one sort of a darker gold metal and one of a lighter gold metal to give it a bit of the yin yang thing. I think that's what I did on the previous one, being gold metal as well, but I didn't really change up the actual shape of the yin yang. On this one, I took the dark versus light sort of thing from it. Remove those two dots, because adding those dots in is just, it screams yin yang too hard. You can't really look at it any other way. And just put that, it's sort of like an S almost in some ways. Like an S or a 2 or whatever, I can't think right now. Since the image keeps flipping, I can't really look at it properly. And I incorporated that, and they're like her, the emblem on her sleeves. Her belt buckle has it. Her fucking dog collar has it. It's so weird to think about, like a professional police officer wearing their badge around their neck. It's so like fetishy and stupid and kinky. It's almost, you can't even think about it really. Oh, and I also put it on her. Renamon has her thigh swirls or whatever. So I'm thinking of a way to incorporate those. And for some reason, I decided on big, ridiculous looking knee pads that were too far up. It's actually like a huge failure, actually. Thinking about it now and looking at it, it's a huge failure in a design sense. Just completely wrong in a design sense, in the methodology I'm trying to establish for these fusions. But again, I'm sort of became enamored with this sort of fighter punk vigilante character I had, and I'm thinking, what's something that like they would have? Maybe not so much a vigilante, because she has a badge. I guess maybe she crafted it for herself. But what's like an official police officer who punches as enforcement, as to carry out her law enforcement duties? What would she have? And brass knuckle and thigh guards, I guess. She has that stupid little like one cuff I added. There's so much of this fucking design I hate when I'm just like looking at it, and when I'm thinking about it, I overthink it to the point I hate it. But if I just like open it up and like look at it, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool, you know? But if I fucking think about it, I hate it. So I guess that's the goal of all art, is just to look at it and don't think about it, or you'll hate it. I spent so much time off camera just changing things. Like there was that bit, well, that was on camera, the bit of me changing her face into something that didn't need to be fixed. Let's see, I fucked around with her torso a lot. It looks completely different than to what the final video ends up looking like, or what's in the video. It's not what it ends up looking like. It's like almost completely different, because I gave it like that huge, it's almost like the actual abs themselves are like jutted forward a huge amount, and that's because of that sort of side of them I gave where it's all in shadow, but her obliques aren't. So it makes it look like her fucking torso is like this huge rectangle that juts out too much. And I spent probably 2 hours. 2 hours of me sort of doing fuck around work, where I'm just like watching something, or paying half attention to something or shitposting a Discord while also drawing. Super ineffective way to work. Don't do it. I'm just sort of like fucking around with it. I eventually got it looking the sort of way I want to. Looking at it now in front of me is like, I can't look at this drawing. I can't. I need to just like stand 20 feet away from it and just clap. That's all I need to fucking do. Just like enjoy it as it is. Ugh. I don't like to be one of those artists who shits on their work to the point where it's almost frustrating to even interact with that artist, because I sort of get that I put off that vibe a lot and I don't really like it. But it's so hard just not to fall into that line of thinking for me personally, and even more so when I'm trying to do a commentary video about my own work. So I apologize if I do that too much, but I'm probably going to keep doing it anyway. As a meme, I guess, or whatnot. I said before I would talk about the shading or the rendering. I think I have enough time to bullshit for this as a video. For cell shading, I've had a lot of difficulty sort of trying to make it work, because a lot of times what I just need, I feel like I need to do is just go in there with a blending tool or a blur tool and just blur the shading out so I get a smooth gradients. But that's, to me, at that point, that's not cell shading. That's rendering. That's an entirely different thing. And if I'm doing that, I need to go ahead and just abandon line art. It's this weird mess of me trying to put everything in its correct drawing box when I should just be trying to do what looks good. Which I guess I'm sort of trying to do anyway, but I just can't make it look good. So I'm just getting frustrated and trying to make something, trying to solve a problem. So I'm actually trying to do it correctly, but I'm annoyed it's not working. Wow, that sounds childish. But anyway, the sort of methodology or process I've come up with is, and you can like look at, rewind the video and look at me, like mute me fucking trying to spit words into this microphone and just sort of watch me draw as I'm saying this part. But I'll do a sort of a base shading layer, sort of a mid-tone across the entire thing. And I'm trying not to use multiply layers anymore, or at the very least, I'm trying to not use one color on that multiply layer for everything, because it just sort of, it muddies everything. It brings everything, all the colors so close together that you can't really tell what's going on. So I'll go in there and select each sort of base color I have, because that's on a different layer, and I do all the colors in binary if I can. Sometimes if there's like a fur gradient or something that needs to be a local color, this sort of fucking gets thrown out the entire window. So I sort of have to work around that or invent an entirely new process when I encounter that problem. But I will try to use multiple colors on a single multiply layer for like the base shading. So I'll go into like the purple of the jacket and select that area. And then on the layer that's the multiply layer that has the shading, I'll sort of shift that color around so it stands out more but doesn't sort of fuck up the entire picture. And I'll do that for like I did it for, I think, one of the fur colors, the jacket, and probably the pants as well. Just to get rid of that muddy problem. And then I'll go in and I'll make a secondary multiply layer. That's sort of a darker shade. And what that's mostly for is for me to get more shape definition. Not so much where darkness needs to be. It lets me imply form where I can't really do that with the first layer. Because if you look at her legs, from the way the lighting is, those are entirely in shadow. So from just one shading layer, I can't really carve into that shadow I've put down to show where the form's turning. I can do that in line, I guess, but that's sort of its own layer, its own process or sweep. So, because, here we're at the end now. Man, I take such a long time to explain things. I'm awful at everything. But I'll go in. But you can't go in and sort of see how, to show how everything's turning on like her leg. Because you can see it now. I can't go in and carve back into that first shading layer. I have to go into a secondary shading layer and show where that's turning even more. Because you can see on her leg, there's the light part where the light's hitting at this sort of rim light I have. And that's on its own separate layer. And then you have the base shade, then you have the darker shade, and then you have another rim light that's sort of more of a fill light. And I'm doing that to show how the leg curves. It's a cylindrical thing as like a basic shape with sort of like the sort of geometry of the muscles and the bone flowing everywhere. And I do that with the secondary shading layer mostly. Then on top of that, I have a rim light. I always do. Rim light solves everything. Rim light just looks good. And that's sort of the pink that on her left there. Or her right, or whatever. The pink color. And that sort of really shows how everything, that there's a behind to the drawing. And on the other side, I do a fill light just to, again, show more of the geometry and plane changes. And then on top of those two things, because one of the problems is with cell shading is you can't really do highlights unless they're like little dots on metal. You can't do a light sort of area. It just looks weird. You can't do anything higher than the base color. Sort of a lightness on the base color. So what I've done to get around that is I'll go in and I'll select all of the first shading layer. And then from there I will invert that selection. And then this is completely because of, I could do it in the other versions too. Psi 2 has a gradient tool. And I'll do a gradient light across that very light and turn the layer to a color dodge layer. And what that does is it sort of gives the effect of like light intensity lowering as you look down the figure, because the light intensity is obviously above them. And looking down the figure, that light intensity fades because it's a gradient. And you put it low enough, it's very natural, very subtle. But if you turn it off and on again, you can very clearly see the effect. And sort of what that does is let me convey a light source, not having to go in and try to do that with a sort of a plane change method. And then I also do that inversely for a color burn layer across that, going down to up to sort of imply a darkness or whatever. And this is way over now. I'm looking at the second video in this playlist, which is the sort of bad jittery version or whatever, so I need to wrap this up. Anyways, the drawing is alright, even if it's a total failure on the methodology side of things. Thanks for watching all the way through, guys. I really appreciate anyone sitting through this shit show. If you like the video, consider subscribing to the channel for a new shitty video every month, and drop a comment and tell me what you think. You can support these videos by pledging on Patreon/MainlineMojo, where you can throw $1 of goodwill my way, or $5 for early access to posts and works in progress of artwork and a vote in my monthly poll. So basically nothing. Again, you can go find my Twitter and FA accounts yourself to see all my nasty commission work and various pandering. Until next time, when I decide to torture myself with this project again, bye guys.